There is nothing wrong with your radio.
Do not attempt to adjust the volume.
We are controlling the broadcast.
For the next hour we will control all that you hear.
You are about to experience the knowledge and insights of the Media Mothership.
All right, here we are on Media Mothership for another week at Edge Radio 99.3 FM. And as always, we're exploring how media shapes the world around us. I'm Craig, your co-host, or host, actually. Who knows where the co-host is today. But I am joined by special guest Ashley Remminga from the University of Tasmania, cultural studies analyst extraordinaire. How are you, Ashley?
You're selling me way too high. Hello, I'm good.
Last time I caught up with you, Ashley, and this has only just come to my mind, you had completed at that stage your hoops to jump through to become part of the censorship board, classification board of Australia.
Yes.
Anything ever come of that?
A journal article still in the works, but
excellent.
But yes, no, I haven't classified anything. I reserved my right to do that. I feel it wouldn't be right to be criticizing the board at times, and also putting my own things through it.
But that's one of the great things I find about the effort you've made. You live in a couple of different worlds. You know, the academic world. Then you've also kind of put yourself in a professional space, trying to with the classifications area and the fan environment.
Yeah.
So when I'd mentioned to you last week that we were looking at Gigantor, you immediately seized on the opportunity to come on and bring in your own kind of family history and personal interest in Gigantor as well.
Absolutely. I was so excited. I was like a kid in a candy shop. So I was like, I have to talk about Gigantor.
So as we're chatting on today's show, feel free to message in at any point on 04888 11707. I'll try to keep an eye on the messages as they come in. We're also streaming on YouTube and Twitch, so feel free to send a chat message there. I guess to set the tone, let's listen to a small snippet of the intro theme. So this is the wonderfully 1960s groove of Gigantor. Interestingly, of course, this is different from the original version in Japan, right? This is not the music they used in the Japanese version.
No.
I've not listened to the Japanese version.
I haven't either. Do they have? No, I think this is the only version.
Definitely for many fans, this would be considered the only version. It'll be interesting to see if because it's Tetsujin. The Japanese title is Tetsujin Niju Hachigo. Yep. So that's Iron Man 28, right? Niju Hachigo. Well, here it is. Let's go to Tetsujin. So let's see. This is meant to be the Japanese version. It seems much more orchestral. Here we go. Oh, there we go. So this is the 1963 Japanese version of it. Yeah, which is a lot more kind of anthemic, kind of marching band vibe, whereas the American version is, as Fred Ladd was talking about last week when we were playing some snippets of his commentary track, is much more kind of Henry Mancini, James Gunn vibe than the marching band. So we'll dive in looking at how Gigantor works, what it's bequeathed, I guess, anime culture, and explore, if we've got time for it, a little bit from the DVD of the Gigantor from Madman Entertainment, which has commentary track from Fred Ladd, who was the American localizer of this property, or worked in a team to localize this. He was the director, producer, writer of the American version. And I always find that he introduces himself as the director, producer, and writer of Gigantor, which I think
it's sneaky.
Minimizes the Japanese because he was very much one of these early localizers. We're talking Astro Boy and so forth. So,
but it was significantly changed. So I suppose it's like saying I'm the creator of, well, not me personally, but whoever it is, the creator of Power Rangers versus the original Sentai team.
Yeah, and some of those ones do have a different life of their own. Monkey, the original Japanese Monkey, and then the 1980s UK dub, really, I think, defines itself as its own thing. So in terms of Gigantor, for those people that might not be familiar with the Gigantor story, from what I remember of it, it's a remote-controlled giant robot.
Yeah.
Right? The original Japanese name, as we've said, is Tetsujin 28.
Yep.
Tetsujin 28. Tetsujin, Iron Man.
Yeah, Iron Man.
Iron Man. So he's the Japanese Iron Man in some ways, but he's purely remote controlled by. In the American version, his name is Jimmy Sparks.
I didn't know what his English name was. That's
and we're
where
doing
it
the
crosses
Japanese.
over. I know the Japanese. Well.
And today we're excusing ourselves by only doing the dub Americanized version. But he's only like 10 or 12, so very young. And I know one of the funny things listening to the earlier commentary was that the Fred Ladd would be mystified as to why in certain scenes Jimmy Sparks, who's 10-year-old, is flying an airplane and driving a car. And he's saying he couldn't understand why the Japanese animators had him doing all these adult things, where in America it would be illegal. And I was kind of thinking as I was listening to his commentary track that, you're okay with him having the giant robots. The giant robot is absolutely believable, of course.
Yes.
And he then supposed, well, maybe in these countries there's different rules. There aren't different rules. This is fantasy. Interestingly,
you're not allowed to fly a plane?
No, you're not. But what really fascinated me was that, do you know what year the Gigantor series is set?
Oh,
this is a real quiz show question. And I didn't know this either, and it blew my mind.
I'm trying to think. Because of the technology, I'm pretty sure it was a built robot. So I'm guessing it's sometime like 2020 or something like that.
Close, just 2000. So the future 2000. So of course, Gigantor was created in the 1960s. So we're talking, 30 years away. But 40 years away, but clearly, unfortunately, that future has come and gone. No remote-controlled Gigantors.
Not that the government will let you know about.
True, yeah, until the alien invasion.
Jimmy's going to get out there and save us.
So Tetsujin 28 was originally created by manga pioneer Mitsuteru Yokoyama. And I guess, it's considered to be one of the grandfather animes and mangas of giant robots. So we're talking pre-Gundam, certainly way before Evangelion. A lot of those would have been influenced, though.
Well, I think a lot of them were even influenced by a lot of Go Nagai's work, and Go Nagai was inspired by Gigantor. So
you've got Mazinger, right? Nagai did Mazinger Z, which is... Mazinger Z is not remote controlled, though.
No.
There's like a pilot in his head.
Yep.
That's right. But you're really in ground zero here with Gigantor, aren't you? This kind of formative giant robots. Young protagonist, right? Jimmy in the American version, who's commanding him with this remote control thing. And there was a period where... I don't know if you had any remote-controlled objects in your life.
I did, yes. I was of that before the age of iPads everywhere, that I did have a remote-controlled car and a remote-control helicopter,
And you'd have to use... There was a period where, remote-control helicopters were the thing to get.
Yeah, I was more a remote-control car person.
So I guess the... basic structure of Gigantor involves criminal organizations that are going rogue or doing various bad things, and Jimmy Sparks. And in the American version, you got Inspector Blooper. And some of these names are just crazy. And again, we might pop in and listen to some of Fred Ladd's commentary where he talks about why he's named them this way. But these heroes that we see in this series try to foil these enemies. So it's a children's cartoon show.
Yeah.
Aimed at a really young children's demographic. One of those kind of early localizing animes as well. So it's up there with Astro Boy, Kimber the White Line a few years later. But definitely Astro Boy and Gigantor would pretty much be the key two that probably got that initial market. And you were saying your father, again from that earlier generation. Do you have any details about how they watched it?
So I spoke to both my father, my uncle, who are still talking about Gigantor and still know the song and can sing the opening. But for them, it was very much Gigantor was the cooler Astro Boy.
Right.
It was like Astro Boy was the ones that, wasn't as cool. Gigantor was the cool one. You could pilot your friend. You felt safe piloting. You wanted to control. You wanted all that sort of, that I think it's in the opening song, the power in your hand, It might say something about my family with, wanting that power, but, it was also around that sort of 60s period with the space age and everything. So it was hot. It was cool with the idea of piloting a giant robot. It was seen as a bit more mature, despite still being a kids show.
Yeah.
As the more mature, the more, I guess, like the cool boys are watching this show sort of thing. So it was just seen a lot in that sort of way. But also because of his like protector nature, it was like sort of like they described it sort of as like family in some ways, like, a friend, a family, someone you could feel safe with, someone you could almost this escapism into the world. You wanted to be like Jimmy, but you also wanted to have a Gigantor of your own. Yeah,
I mean, because the 1960s period, it's such an interesting moment in history in terms of the type of, I guess you got the Vietnam War coming in a few years. You've got this culture clashes in the US, the civil rights movement. So it's a really a kind of hippie space as well. So in terms of media environment, it's one that's full of revolution and change. So it's fascinating to have Gigantor as the children's entertainment that, again, stretched cultures, went from Japan to the US and really took off in the US and Australia as one of these... for me, it would have fitted into that Saturday morning TV show space. I mean, I never saw it as a kid growing up. So I was born in 74. So I guess, those kind of late 70s, early 80s. But your dad would have been around the same era, early 70s.
I will say...
Sorry, without...
a bit earlier.
Right. Oh, great. All right. Yeah. So he would have probably been ground zero for that audience watching it on TV. Maybe Flash Gordon was on as well. And it's an interesting contrast with Astro Boy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because while many people probably... which one do you think has a bigger brand awareness today, Astro Boy or
Today,
Gigantor?
I would say more people would have heard of Astro Boy than Gigantor. And I think, though, if you grew up at that time, and especially when we look at how inspirational it is, I think in some ways Gigantor, and this is going to be a very controversial pick, I think it might even be more influential than
Gigantor.
Gigantor is more influential than Astro Boy.
Well, what's your rationale?
Both here in Australia, I feel like I've not heard anyone growing up with Astro Boy and Gigantor talk about Astro Boy. I've heard them talk about Speed Racer later on. I've heard them talk about Gigantor, never Astro Boy.
It's interesting. I mean, they're both power fantasies in a way, but I guess the power fantasy of Gigantor is that you're still the human boy that gets to control the robot. Whereas Astro Boy is the Pinocchio myth, right? It's the robot that wants to be a young boy and is struggling to find and understand the world around him, but is superpowered, right?
Yeah.
He's got lasers in the eyes and a cannon out of the butt and so forth. So there's different power fantasies there, I think. And maybe in terms of being able to control devices, particularly maybe with drone technology.
Yeah.
I mean, Gigantor's a drone, isn't he? Gigantor is a giant drone
Yeah.
that rains terror down upon you.
I'm
a
surprised
drone.
we haven't seen Donald
Yeah.
Trump wanting
To do
to build his own
Gigantor.
With his love of film, it would not surprise me if he's somewhere in the back of his mind.
Yeah. So in terms of the legacies, I guess,
Yeah.
I mean, Gigantor, as you were saying, flows into then other work like
Yeah.
Mazinger Z. From
Yeah,
the
and
get-go.
then Go Nagai alone inspired probably everyone for
Yeah.
everything.
You got
with
Gundam.
Magical Girls as well. Some of the more mature themed in series he wrote. So if he inspires that lot, and then also in our films, I don't know any director saying,
Oh, yeah,
"Gosh,
but-
I grew up with being inspired by Astro Boy."
Look, I mean, I think Astro Boy is much like Mickey Mouse, right? He has
Yeah.
this iconic value, which is safe and family friendly.
I think if you're like in terms of merchandising and marketing,
Yeah.
Astro Boy more influential. But if you talk about the cultural influence and the way it changed the industry, I would say it's a lot more like, in some ways, like Looney Tunes was for the cartoon industry,
Yeah,
where
look-
it really changed how people went about it. And when you compare the two, Looney Tunes still popular, but isn't as like marketable as Mickey Mouse. So
I mean, look, I mean, it's interesting to me that I know the name of the creator of Astro Boy, of course,
oh yeah, of course,
but I wouldn't have known the name of the creator of Gigantor.
yeah, no.
So, I mean, much like Disney and Mickey Mouse,
Well, you have the name of the creator of Gigantor.
I
It's
know.
it's Fred, isn't it?
Oh wow, yes. So he claims, right? So he claims, and I guess this is part of the really fascinating deep dive into Gigantor.
Yeah.
Is that Japan is not selling this, right? In terms of its value is not by, as in later generations, like certainly by the time we get to Akira and Evangelion, where there's this cool Japan soft power. Gigantor isn't using Japanese soft power at all. In fact,
Yeah.
we'll listen to some snippets where Fred Ladd's talking about how they really worked hard to minimize, reduce, erase, and remove Japan from this context. What else did your homework reveal? Were there any other exciting tidbits that your your deep family history dive gave you?
I guess the
Confessions?
only the confessions. No, I think it's interesting, like just how they are still so in love with this series from their childhood. Like, I mean, nostalgia with childhood shows. I'm sure we all have shows we watched as kids and going, "Oh, I love that show," and like, all these years later, you come back and you go, "Oh, I'll watch that show from my childhood," if you have the time.
Yeah,
But
and it's
yeah.
it's one of those fraught moments of. There's a meme that I saw recently where someone was saying, me when I'm watching a show I loved as a kid with my new boyfriend, and it's horrible.
Yeah.
It's really shit. Because I do think there's that fear of when you show something you love as a child and you go back and rewatch it. It's all its flaws.
Yes.
Are so transparent. But I do think also there's a way of. I mean, for me, the exciting thing about Gigantor and going into Gigantor is almost like that Henry Jenkins textual poacher vibe.
Yep.
Like, I just want to poach from this Gigantor space because it's so rich. And the American dub in particular is so outlandishly Bactinian carnivalesque vibe to it. It's just, much like Looney Tunes, like when you hear them putting it together, it's like they really made it up as they went along. And in a way, I mean, you wonder how the original Japanese creators would have thought of the I mean, at one bit, Fred Ladd's talking about how happy he is with the comedy they've put into it. And he's saying a lot of these scenes weren't funny in the Japanese original, but we put comedy that worked in it. I'm thinking, no, you didn't. You just completely probably ruined this dramatic scene that the animator wanted and turned it into a joke, which then looking back on it, you're thinking, wow, that's a great meme now, though.
But yet it was seen at the time by the people who watched it as cool and that. So it worked. He hit the target demographic and it worked.
Oh, yeah. Incredibly popular. Well, look, shall we... there's a couple of snippets. So I've looked into the Fred Ladd commentaries. This is from the DVD release. And the segment I'm going to try to queue up. I mean, bear with me as I'm working with my high technology here. The first clip is going to be looking at... so we're looking at the Americanization of Japanese animation. And this is what you do with Japanese mouth shapes. So here, Fred Ladd is talking about trying to get Japanese mouth shapes working. There you go, that's queued up. And what's really interesting here is that philosophy that at this era of translating Japanese animation, we're not translating it, we're reconstructing it, right? It's not they're not talking at all about faithfulness. They're just really brutally removing and saying what works for our market. And because I guess you're not dealing with the fan culture, which has the original and then crucifies the dub by being, Anyway, let's listen to Fred Ladd explaining his approach to translating these animations. Eventually. Hopefully I can... It did work. Hold on. Yes?
It will always work eventually.
It will. Hold on, pressing buttons.
Is the power in your hand?
All right, hold on. Let me see if I can work it on this one. So yes, here we will have the version of Gigantor from Fred Ladd as he's talking about the... Here we go. All right, so setting it up here. So he introduces himself. All right, here we go.
16mm negative, a 16mm print, which has got the Japanese soundtrack on it, and a rough translation of what the Japanese dialogue is saying. Our job is to look at the rough translation of the dialogue, get the sense of it, then find English words that match the mouth shapes, write it to a specific part of the picture. Actors go into the studio where the picture is projected on the big screen. They watch it, they rehearse it, and when you finally got a good take, you print it.
I wonder how that's different to today.
Oh,
right?
It's so different to today.
It does sound to me so much more improvised in terms of you can take huge liberties once you're freed from only looking at the mouth flap to see, okay, so they're ending with the mouth puckered up. So I need a word that ends like an ooh sound. If that's your only need, then yeah, obviously you're going to stray completely from what the original dialogue might have been.
I mean, I'm impressed they even got something close to it at times.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that type of adaptation philosophy, it really leaves you with a completely different text, I guess is the exciting part of it. That, if you can completely kind of avoid the desire for the original, you're going to get a completely different text out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so this second piece of Fred Ladd's dialogue, which really surprised me, was his revelation that because of the scheduling of cartoons in America, where the stations that they would syndicate to could play the episodes in any order they wanted, right? So they had to provide translations, or they had to provide Gigantor to these stations in a way that could be played out of order. Of course, Gigantor in the original Japanese is in order.
Yes.
Right, you have
as texts generally are, there is usually a coherent plot.
Yeah, that straddles a number of episodes.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you can have those shows. I guess it was, in the 60s, 70s, you'd have a lot of just Like Happy Days would just be,
Yeah.
you don't have to watch in any order. There wouldn't really be character development. So it meant, though, that for Gigantor, which was originally Japanese, meant for a long-form storytelling,
Yep.
where you'd have a setup at the end of an episode that would pay off in the next episode or episodes to come. They turned out, as Fred Laird will explain here, they'd have to go back to the Japanese studio and ask them to do new animation for them to finish the episode with.
Yeah.
That would just close it off, which seems crazy that they could ask the Japanese studio to just redo the third act or the final few minutes. So they've got a script where they can just say goodbye to everyone. I was like, I don't know. Anyway, let's see what Fred Laird says about this process.
Is our show number 4. It picks up where number 3 ended, the previous episode, and the writer's job here is to reestablish the premise of the picture without hearkening too much, without relating too much back to the previous episode, because when stations showed this years ago, they wouldn't necessarily run episode 4 right after episode 3. They might scramble the shows, and you might have weeks go by between the showing of episode 3 and episode 4. So you had to make it sound as if it were running a sequence, but make it sound independent as well. So you didn't have to see episode 3 just before to understand what was happening now in our episode 4.
It's Dickie Strong calling me from Polyvania.
Which seems to not be part of the golden age of TV storytelling process, right?
No.
If you think about The Sopranos, right? I mean, it's all about how TV today is, up there with cinema in terms of the long-form storytelling experience. It's a really different generation of television engagement when you're looking at non-continuity-based episodic storytelling.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the fact that the original Japanese is long, I mean, that made me sad, I got to admit, in terms of, because I'm so locked into the satisfaction of binging a number of episodes together and getting the satisfaction of character development. Gigantor is stuck in a constant episode loop where
Nothing happens.
Yeah, well, yeah, and he talks about this at the start of every episode, that they have to always script a quick intro to everything again, assuming that this is the first time anyone's seen it and that they don't know who the characters are yet still, or that it's all out of order and they won't know what character's about to appear in Act 2. So they've got all of this superfluous exposition constantly being forced into it. But the visuals still hold up nicely. But it is a different world that I guess Japanese animation was getting dubbed into.
Well, it's interesting because even up until more recently, there was still instances very similar to Gigantor, like with 4Kids Entertainment and their approach to dubbing a lot of Japanese animation, because they had to localize sometimes quite mature shows, but for kids. So they censored guns and made them water pistols,
right.
And so they had to reanimate certain slides, and then they again had a lot more of that episodic approach where kids might miss episodes because they're sick or something, or their parents won't let them watch TV. So they had to also cut episodes in ways that would make it more accessible for kids to skip a couple episodes and come back. So we still do see it, but not as frequently. And I think especially with the streaming era, where you can just access the entire series all at once, you don't have to worry as much. So it is a lot more one-to-one adaptation.
I think there's two good takeaways there. One is that yes, television has changed over time, and this is a real time capsule of a previous generation's model of television production. But
the good
also,
old days.
This is children's entertainment as well, which still has that model, right? As you're saying, that children's entertainment still will be episodic rather than long-form continuity storytelling. Not continuity per se, just standalone seriality. Maybe it's the difference. Right, next point is inventing words for American kids. So in a couple of sequences, Fred Ladd talks about how they just invented words that they thought kids would respond to because they needed to name a country something. Some of this is dated really badly in terms of the decision-making behind.
I like that you're warning me now. I'm expecting really bad stuff now.
Oh, it's worse. Sadly, I don't think it's in this commentary track of this episode, but I think the next episode, or the first episode, he talks about why they do dialects, right? It's really fascinating in terms of they'll have, because it's a small production team on this. It's like 3 voice actors and Fred Ladd. So the 3 voice actors would have to do all the voices. And he's pointing out that at some point, they decided the easiest way to distinguish, even though it's the same actor doing 10 voices, was to do dialects. So indeed, yes, you've got the horrible, I think this one has the horrible French dialect coming up. But we'll get to that. But anyway, this is weird reasons to give names to places.
Yes, Dick.
Polyvania, where'd that name come from? Well, it had to be a tropical island. And I took the name Polyvania because I thought of the polycultures living there somewhere in the South Pacific. It's a mythical South Pacific island, Polyvania.
Oh, and we thought that.
I love that kind of. Well, it's in, where is it? South Pacific or South America? It's a polyculture. Nevertheless, it's a polyculture. That whole cultural space is polyculture, therefore Polyvania. Vania. Where does it doesn't explain Vania. When I hear Vania, I think Transylvania or Eastern Europe. It's such a weird mashup, Polyvania. So yes, Polyvania from the mashup of that. We'll see if I don't know if he defends it any further.
Fiend was through.
Now there we harken back. We thought that fiend was through. That harkens back to the previous episode, but we wouldn't have to have just seen the previous episode to get in context here. Here we're reviewing what happened before.
Including the king and queen have been...
And again, that's that voice he has to explain why there's so much exposition in Gigantor, because it was in the previous episode, but we can't assume anyone saw the previous episode, so we're having to set it up again in this episode, which seems just so frustrating.
It's as much as I hate it, at the same time, shows these days still do have those moments, like One Piece. Oh my gosh.
All right.
There was an episode that
yeah.
I timed how long it took for the exposition to end, and it was about 7 minutes into the show. I was like, I can't do this.
There we go. Yeah. I mean, and I think, what is that? Bad story writing, or they need to stretch out the time?
They needed to stretch it half a chapter
it.
adapting. Oh.
All right, here it is. So this is a really fascinating dive into what this 60s era was like for voice actors. So here he is talking about the use of dialects to differentiate characters. So most episodes, Fred Ladd, the adapter, localizer of Gigantor into the American market, has a moment where maybe he's defending or trying to contextualize for an audience why this decision was made. I don't think he's talking about it in the context of, I know shows like The Simpsons received criticism for the fact that, the character of Apu is voiced not by an Indian actor. So that idea that an actor not of that culture is doing a dialect of that culture. So that, I think, is dated in terms of the desire now to provide that authenticity by trying to hire someone from that dialect or removing that character. Let's hear how in the 1960s that was pretty much modus operandi.
That light. Power failure? Don't tell anyone I told you, but I understand.
Now that voice with the dialect, that is Gilbert Mack playing the chef. And again, the reason for using a dialect there, why? Because Dick Strong didn't have one. But we needed to separate Gilbert, his voice here, from all the others. So he's using a French chef dialect.
Warhead. How are we supposed to cook? Yeah, it's tough, all right. Whoop, there goes all the power. What are they up to? Who cares? They ruined my London broil.
They ruined my London broil. I wanted to have a little gag ending there. I wasn't sure what to say. I thought of saying, they ruined my souffle. I wasn't sure that everyone knew what a souffle was. So I thought a London broil is generic enough to where everybody can get it. So went with that rather than a souffle.
Then get it, you fool! Get it.
I don't know if a London broil is more everyday than a souffle.
What is a London broil?
I don't know. And I was really taken aback by that statement because I'm thinking maybe that's a 1960s thing, right? If you're from the 1960s, the London broil was like in all the restaurants. You wouldn't be able to not go into a restaurant and order the London broil. I've never heard it.
I've not either.
London broil. And it's French.
Well, I know what a souffle is.
Totally. This is what I couldn't understand. He decided not to go with souffle because he thought that was too esoteric and difficult
Wouldn't you say something like the broth or the...
Well, okay,
or
yeah.
like the soup? Something more generic.
Yeah, I guess this is right. Because his concern is, okay, so he has this dialect guy, the French chef that they've chosen. And they've chosen the French chef because, again, it's the same voice actor. They've only got 4, so they need to give a different audio cue for this character. So they've decided he'll be French. And then, of course, Fred Ladd's dilemma was, all right, well, he wants to set up a joke that because of this power failure, the chef's food's going to be spoiled. So, okay, what's a French meal that the guy could have been cooking? And, of course, it's souffle, right? If you're going for the stereotypical joke. But London broil... SMS in 0488811707. Have you eaten, known of, ordered at a restaurant the London broil? Because I have not.
Next week you're going to have someone bring it in and you're going to test it on camera.
Yeah. It's bizarre. It's I mean, maybe it's only in the 60s, like one of those kind of it's a kidney pie or something that was only popular then. Who knows? Anyway, so London broil. It is. I mean, what do you think about the idea of dialects and dubbing? Do you have a stance on that? Are you on the mic?
Yeah.
Hold on. Is your mic not on?
Can you hear me?
Oh, I can now. Yep.
Sorry.
Let's move it a bit.
Yeah. So.
So dialect.
Dialect. Oh,
do you see any anime that has much dialect work in it these days? Like we're talking super stereotyped French chef.
I mostly watch the Japanese now, so
do they perform dialects if they're doing
I do love a really bad English dialect. And that with the broken English and the stereotypes there.
JoJo's Bizarre Adventure has a couple of really shocking English performances done by the Japanese voice cast.
There is certainly some still there which are quite
But that's always punching up, I think, right? The problem with dialects is when you're punching down, when you're delivering it as a joke at the expense of that cultural identity. Yeah,
exactly.
That's simply performing a tired, stereotypical identity. Yeah. And, again, the jokey French chef, we can laugh at it. And I don't think that's dated too badly because that French identity, it's not an impoverished identity. No. It's not an identity of exploitation or of historical abuse. I'm not saying that excuses, making fun of someone's accents.
We're not encouraging punching down on the French.
But in terms of choices, they could have done worse than the French chef. It could have been more badly dated.
Oh, yes.
I guess, than the French chef.
I'm scared to think what else is.
Yeah. There's the Irish beat cop in the first episode, which is shocking. I mean, the Irish beat cop does play, I think, into concerns of poor cultural stereotyping. Yep. And it also belies a sense of, why that cultural identity was stuck with certain professions as well. There's a certain historical deep dive you can do into what that French chef stereotype signifies in terms of chef employment and cultural capital, maybe. But it's also interesting with Gigantor in that the dubbing is it's very much cartoon comedy acting rather than what later on, after animation broke out of that children's ghetto, if we can reduce it to that, but after it diversified, where those performances could be much more nuanced. But with Gigantor, we're really looking at cartoon comedy performances, right, which are meant to hold a child's interest, not a thespian, Shakespearean Patrick Stewart level.
I don't know. I think that
French
London broil sounds like it deserves an accolade of some sort.
Okay, well, the next example, I wish I had. Oops, sorry, I think I've skipped too far. I think the next example is a really fascinating one. And sadly, radio won't do it justice, but we will set it up in terms of this one is what do you do with Japanese dialogue that's written, right? So what do you do with Japanese kanji and hiragana and katakana when it appears on the screen? All right. What would you do if you were dubbing an anime and like the panel that suddenly popped up on a screen that the characters interacted with had Japanese writing on it? How would you would you deny
me in 2025? 1960s. Okay,
right? Where you're thinking, well, I don't think kids are studying Japanese language, so they probably don't know it. How would you approach that as a kind of puzzle so you don't mystify your audience?
I don't know how the cells were created, especially back then, because like nowadays you can easily edit over.
Yep, and one strategy is potentially to erase it somehow.
You can erase it. You can localize it with more stuff. So I think you could do that if you're trying to appeal to a child audience in the 1960s. In a tasteful way with the knowledge of 2025, you could do that. I personally wouldn't censor it now.
Maybe it's an entry point. You tell them it's Japanese language and they'll go, wow, maybe this is from Japan. But I guess I don't know. I mean, there maybe was still, 1960s, interesting era because you are in, where's the Japanese bubble at this point? You are in this period maybe of the rise of the Japanese economy in the 60s as automobile sales start to dominate. So, I mean, by the time you're getting into the 70s, you've definitely got a lot of anti-racist or an anti-Japanese vibe because of Toyota buying up so much of the market, basically the American market struggling to compete and TV sales and so forth. But in the 60s, I don't think, and there's still the World War II racism there. So maybe that's another reason. Anyway, let's hear how Fred Ladd approached this problem.
Gosh.
Playing it gruff now, as a guard would do.
Hold more experiments.
They finally broke down Dr. Emeritus.
These are the computer symbols.
Computer symbols?
I call them computer symbols. They are actually Japanese symbols, but computer symbols seem to make more sense now. We're easier to explain to our audience.
Maxine Laverne are sisters.
Maxine Laverne.
The interesting thing for me there that I love is that, okay, so again, to visualize this, it's a kind of computer space.
Yep.
So it is interesting that he went the sci-fi angle, that the weird signs that they're seeing, which is Japanese. I don't know. Sadly, I've not got the visual in front of me, but the katakana, I imagine, or maybe it's a kanji. They've said it's just sci-fi. It's just sci-fi. It's just computer, guys. And I mean, as a person that sees Japan, part of its kind of soft power was the idea that it became in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s a country associated with high tech. It's not a bad one, right? In terms of cultural identity, seeing the symbology as, at least they didn't say it's witchcraft.
I'm very torn because it's tasteful for the era. And I think saying it's computer language is a very clever way to localize it for kids in the 1960s. At the same time, I also just
missed opportunity.
Don't like it, yeah.
Well, it could be. I mean, again, as a educator, you could say, this could have been where they missed a possibility of getting a Japanese language boom happening in America, right? Where it's like, oh, Gigantor, because at this point, the fascinating thing to remember with Gigantor is watching it, most people, 100% maybe, unless they're involved in the production or ever traveled, wouldn't know it's from Japan. And Japan didn't matter, right, in terms of any positive or negative associations at all. So we're talking about the experience of these texts completely divorced from anyone knowing they're from Japan or seeing that as an important thing to tell someone. And And I guess we're talking only, 15 years after World War II ending. So to be equivalent to, after 9/11, 15 years after that, you've got a Middle Eastern-based cartoon series from Afghanistan that's enormously popular in the West, right? I mean, it'd be one of these head-scratchers kind of, what? How did that country... Why are your kids watching it?
But instead of Arabic, it's computer language.
That would be equivalent, wouldn't it? If we're watching that series and we see Arabic, and it's like, well, the kids don't know this language, so we just call it computer language.
I also just said Arabic, and I don't even know if that's the correct language, which I hope it is, but I'm sure
SMS,
there is. Yeah,
chat in. So, but again, a fun little moment of. I guess that decision-making to remove Japanese language, either maliciously as a way to prevent the exposure of Japan to the US audience, or simply to, not create confusion amongst the audience. Because I guess in terms of the cultural value that Japan represents at this point, my assumption would be, much like I guess Koichi Wabuchi argues with a lot of his research in the early 2000s about Japanese anime, was that there was still that cultural cringe within Japan that the foreignness of Japaneseness wouldn't sell to an American market, right? The lack of any music in Japanese music into America, it was only these mukokuseki, these culturally odorless, as Iwabuchi argues, texts, which at the Japanese side they were also pushing, right? So at a Japanese level, they'd probably not have pissed off the creators, but nevertheless, as a cultural Trojan horse, I'd like to think that some kids did get it. They're like, well, this is Japanese.
It inspired a whole generation of people to sit down, to pick up books and learn computer language.
Yeah. All right, well, picking up, I cut him off before he did this, so we'll listen to a little bit again of him explaining it, because what he then sets up after he explains why they had to explain Japanese language as computer language, he then sets up the cultural references they were pulling upon from America to make it relatable, which again took me out of the immersion of Gigantor somewhat.
He broke down Dr. Emeritus.
These are the computer symbols.
Computer symbols?
I call them computer symbols. They are actually Japanese symbols, but computer symbols seem to make more sense now. We're easier to explain to our audience.
Maxine Laverne are sisters.
Maxine Laverne sisters. That refers to the Andrews sisters, a big singing act of the wartime, World War II time. The famous Andrews sisters. One was Maxine, one was Laverne. I thought it was a good comic touch and one that would be recognizable. What it means today in the 21st century, I'm not sure. But it plays well, I feel.
So that's such an interesting point he's making there. In terms of putting a World War II joke into a Japanese anime, which I just love.
Immediately after erasing Japan.
That's right, erasing Japan. So I think it's so layered. So here he's referring to the Andrews sisters, as he's saying, popular wartime band for improving US and Western morale as they were fighting the Japanese. And that's a kind of, in a forgiving sense, you could say it's much like Pixar do with their movies, which are aimed at an adult and children's, or it's a family show, but you want to put some in-jokes in there for the adults to get. So you could forgive it in that sense and saying, maybe this is aimed at the poor mum that's sitting down watching Gigantor, that it's this reference to the culture she would have been a young kid in herself during the wartime listening to. But nevertheless, it's such a fascinating little effort to Americanize it by taking the names of a popular female band and putting it as the names of the characters in that series.
I think it hasn't aged well.
And I guess that is the danger of localization, that when you go culture specific with your localization, you're rewriting it at that point, right? You're not really adapting it, so you've pretty much crossed a line. I mean, in terms of what Gigantor's doing, this is a great example of how it rewrites Gigantor. It's not at all concerned with Tetsujin 28 the Japanese version. They know what they're wanting to create, which is an American children's cartoon. and they're going to put all the pop culture references in they can. And again, talking about why they would erase the Japanese-ness. Yeah, we were speculating maybe World War II still casts a strong shadow, and I reckon it really does. And the fact that you've got a World War II reference within this of the Andrews sisters. I mean, it's a small reference, but nevertheless, I think as an Easter egg, it does speak volumes in terms of.
I wonder what the original, like the Japanese audience would have thought when they're getting told about, like, yeah, we're going to localize it in this way. We're going to call it computer language, and then we're going to put a joke in afterwards about World War II.
Yeah, look, what's interesting about the computer language jokes is I mean, this is the David Morley talks about the techno-Orientalism stereotype that Japan was stuck with in the 90s and 80s and 90s. And one of the ideas was that Japan, from many derogatory racist attacks against Japan in the 80s and 90s in terms of its rising automobile industry and a kind of high-tech Sony Walkman space, was that it was a production line of automatons, that it was a kind of collective ant-like empire of drudgery and workplaceness. So this kind of computer language adaptation that had been done is a kind of foreshadowing of what would later become the derogatorization of a robotic country of Japan from Westerners that were seeing it as an overly too efficient, too robotic. What is it? Domo arigato, Mr. Roboto. So, yeah, in a way, the computer language, I don't know, it's a rich one because there is that association. The song Domo arigato, Mr. Roboto, Japan and robots, and a lot of it is derogatory. Yeah. Okay. Point 7. Making villains non-threatening. So children's entertainment. This little set is set up more around, I guess, censorship, right? Given your experience yourself in the censor board. So here they are. I mean, Gigantor is kind of violent. There's crime gangs, and they're having to fight the crime gangs all the time. So this is their approach to crooks, how they approached the violence of Gigantor.
And it's interesting here to note about humor. You notice that the goons, the crooks, are played here with humor as well. They're not just really menacing crooks. There's a comedy aspect to the crooks. They're often bumbling themselves. They'll walk on tiptoes in a comic style. There is no attempt here to frighten. You feel the crooks are friendly. They're just inept, that's all.
So I feel like that portrayal, yeah, it's children's entertainment, so you don't want to do anything too violent. But again, it is very much of its time in terms of you had so much censorship and so much control over comics and cartoons. And this is different from the Japanese environment where, the introduction of the Comics Code Authority onto Marvel Comics. I mean, basically it removed from the comics environment in America all those horror comics, all those crime comics, which were aimed at a teen and early 20s audience. And because of concerns in the 60s around the violence and adult content in comic books, which were also seen as children's entertainment, American legislation came in, banning the store sale. Like, you could only buy horror comics under the desk. You had to ask the newsagent. And basically it destroyed, which is not what happened in Japan, right? So many people ask, why is it that the American comic book industry, like in the 70s, 80s, 90s to today, is basically dominated by superheroes? Yet in Japan, you've got an enormous array of comic genres, science fiction, comedy, explanation on history shows, dramas, right? Adults, children. And a lot of it is this time that Gigantor's airing, where there was such a crackdown on what you could and couldn't show to kids. And also any genres or mediums associated with kids, like comic books, were under so much surveillance that it basically destroyed the adult arts of those spaces. So cartoons were stuck in that space as well.
Yep.
So
and I found it really interesting, the approaches they used for it, because we would look at it for classification as well when it comes to things like the sound and that, to build the ambience of the comedic elements, so comedic violence and that, or highly stylized violence as a comic violence is not perceived as violent in the same way as like I'm going to kill you violence and that. And I think there's a really great episode of Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Oh yes, right.
Where they play off. They've got a recording of the two of the characters' parents, their mothers, living together, and they played the same clip several times, one with a laugh soundtrack and one without the laugh soundtrack. And when it's without the laugh soundtrack, it's really dark and ominous. It's like, I'm going to smash your head in. And then when it's with the laugh soundtrack, it's like, I'm going to smash your head in, laugh soundtrack. And it's like, oh, it's funny now. It's like, it's funny because the sound and that, it's now like a sitcom.
Yep.
So just how like sound can transform, whether it's comedic violence, whether it's serious violence, and all these other things. And that all does impact when we look at classification and accessibility for kids and that.
Thank you, Ash. Because, I do think that one of the fascinating things about that insight is what you do when you're stuck with these requirements, restrictions, classification legislation. And there are really clever ways of approaching it.
Yeah.
As you're saying, music, the heavy lifting that a laugh track can do. And removing that laugh track reveals a menace that wasn't there beforehand. So as is in that example with Fred Ladd talking,
and the tippy toes, like the what is it? They're like do.
That's right, the piano, that kind of 2-key piano rhythm.
Yeah,
set
and
up.
those sorts of things, and like just how they've created the voices for the characters, and that all does bring it down for. Oh, this is stylized comedic, like bumbling comedy, as opposed to this is threatening, because threatening does impact classification. And I note they are appealing to a American audience as opposed to an Australian audience, and the guidelines we have in Australia have changed several times, including I think 3 times since like majorly since Gigantor came out. So it's not the same guidelines we use now, but especially now we would look at things like that.
Well, I mean, with the upcoming Australian registration around social media, we can see that concerns and moral panics or media panics around children are still at the fore of cultures and national identity.
The way to get around the social media ban is just to consider using computer language instead of Japanese or English. Computer language.
What did the Japanese know to solve our social media problem? They're writing in computer language already. Well, we're pretty much at time. Any final thoughts on Gigantor?
I think it is such a transformative show. It's just so culturally impactful. It's one of those shows that I think has transformed media as a whole from when it first was created as a manga, and then as an anime, and then as Gigantor, the localized version. So much of our culture today has come from the influence of Gigantor. So I think it really does deserve its place in history as one of the greats of media.
And you were showing me that if you're really keen on Gigantor, you can travel to Japan to see Gigantor, can't you?
Yes, there is a life-sized monument of Gigantor in Kobe. I don't know the exact the exact location. You'll have to look it up. But yes, you can go and see Gigantor. It's magnificent. It's definitely worth it.
So make sure you bring your remote control with you
Yes.
if you're traveling to Japan. Go to Kobe and get a photo of yourself with Gigantor. Interestingly, of course, I'd only ever seen Gigantor black and white. Fascinating to see the colors of Gigantor, vivid blue with
Yeah.
red kind of wrist guards and so forth.
Yeah.
Very striking colors. So you can get a photo of yourself with it, and if you've got the right remote control, possibly power it.
We don't know. I have not tried that. So
There you go.
Yes.
SMS in now for next show. Well, we're finishing now, so next week maybe. Well, we've still got more commentaries of Fred Ladd to get back to. We'll return to Gigantor in the future. Thank you, Ash, so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
No, a huge blast, and taking us into a deep dive into the Americanization of 1960s anime. And also reminding us, really, as you were saying, because I know Emerald King, a friend of the show, doing a great symposium today on death.
Death,
Rebirth.
life, rebirth.
Life.
Yeah.
But really, yeah, we need to get an Australian history of the localization of anime documented.
Yeah.
So to be continued there, I think. In the meantime, here's some cool tunes coming up on Edge Radio. Keep listening now. And Media Mothership will be back next week for some more deep diving into media eccentricities and oddities.